Imagine a boy, just 7, vanishing into a shadowed room as war ravages the land outside. No food. No water. Sealed shut for 31 endless days. Yet he emerges, eyes gleaming with unholy calm, whispering secrets of the soul's deepest sins. Was this divine retribution, or something far more terrifying lurking in the walls? You won't believe what haunts this true tale. In the sweltering haze of 1864 Georgia, where the Civil War's distant thunder echoed like the wrath of an Old Testament god, Haralson County clung to existence like a forgotten psalm etched in red clay soil. The air hung heavy with the scent of parched earth and gunpowder rumors, a land where faith and fear intertwined like kudzu vines choking ancient oaks. Men had been plucked from their plows by the Confederate call, leaving behind women with calloused hands and children whose eyes held the hollow stare of prophets in waiting. It was a time when the Bible was not just read but lived, verses of tribulation and redemption recited over meager meals, as if words alone could ward off the encroaching doom. But in this forsaken corner, amid the cicada's relentless dirge and the sun's merciless gaze, something unnatural stirred. A boy named Elias Voss, note the biblical echo, like the prophet who ascended without death, defied the laws of flesh and spirit. Sealed in a room for 31 days, bereft of sustenance, he emerged not as a withered husk, but alive, his gaze piercing the veil between mortal sin and divine mystery. This wasn't mere survival, it was a parable of guilt unspoken, a haunting legacy that whispered of Judgment Day come early. Doctors scribbled notes in trembling hands, pastors murmured exorcisms under their breath, and neighbors crossed themselves at the mention of his name. For in Elijah's story, the true terror wasn't the boy's endurance, it was the shadows of retribution that danced in his wake, suggesting that some sins burrow deep, waiting to claw their way out. Haralson County, nestled in Georgia's heart like a buried relic, was no battleground epicenter. Armies skirted its edges, deeming it unworthy of conquest, yet the war's specter loomed large, a ghostly apparition draining life from the fields. Cornstalks withered under the relentless sun, their husks cracking like brittle bones, while families gathered around flickering lanterns to read letters stained with the ink of loss. The air carried the faint, acrid tang of distant smoke, mingling with the earthy musk of turned soil and the sweet rot of overripe peaches fallen unpicked. Reverend Josiah Cain's Baptist Chapel, a weathered structure of pine and faith, stood sentinel on the town's lone thoroughfare, Mill Road, named with the stark utility of a people who valued deed over decoration. Sermons here were laced with fire and brimstone, warnings of a reckoning for a nation steeped in the sin of division. "The Lord tests the faithful," Cain would intone, his voice rumbling like thunder over the congregation's bowed heads, sweat beading on brows in the stifling heat. Yet even he, in private confessions later unearthed from dusty archives, admitted a chill when tales of the Voss farm began to circulate. The Voss homestead perched on a modest knoll 2 miles northeast of Mill Road, its silhouette etched against horizons painted in fiery sunsets that evoked apocalyptic visions from Revelation. Built in the 1820s, the house bore the scars of time like stigmata, patched clapboards whispering of floods and famines, a porch sagging under the weight of unspoken griefs. The root cellar, deepened after the deluge of 47, yawned like a grave, its cool, damp breath carrying the faint odor of preserved apples and earthen secrets. Inside, the home exhaled the aroma of wood smoke and lye soap, a sensory tapestry woven from daily toils. Augustus Voss, at 53, moved through this world with the deliberate gait of a man burdened by invisible chains, angular features etched with lines of quiet resolve, eyes shadowed by the loss of his wife, Hannah, to a fever in 1859. He spoke sparingly, his words measured like scripture verses, refusing remarriage as if it were a betrayal of vows sworn before God. Neighbors whispered of his stoic faith, a Calvinist rigor that saw hardship as divine pruning, yet his silence masked a deeper turmoil, the guilt of a father who wondered if his own sins had cursed his lineage. His daughter, Rebecca Voss, 19 that fateful summer, embodied a quiet authority that unsettled the county's gossips. Tall and lithe, with hair the color of midnight ravens, symbolic, perhaps, of messengers from the beyond, she managed the farm's rhythms with precision born of necessity. Her hands, roughened by chores, moved with grace over dough and linens, but her eyes held a watchful depth, as if she peered into soul's hidden recesses. Rebecca was no firebrand, her speech was economical, laced with biblical allusions that hinted at a mind attuned to moral ambiguities. "The Lord provides," she'd say, but her tone carried an undercurrent of doubt, a subtle questioning of why providence seemed so capricious in wartime. The community trusted her practicality, delivering calves in midnight storms, bartering at Prosper Lane's general store with unyielding fairness, but few sought her counsel on matters of the heart, sensing an aura of otherworldliness, as if she carried the weight of ancestral judgments. And then there was Elijah. At 7, he was a wisp of a child, frail-boned like a fledgling angel cast from heaven, his skin pale as moonlit marble, hair a deep ebony that gleamed with an almost ethereal sheen under lantern light. His eyes, a stormy gray, evoked the tempests of Job's trials, beautiful to some, omen-laden to others. Elijah spoke little, his voice a soft murmur that cut through noise like a prophet's whisper. At the one-room schoolhouse, teacher Abigail Pruitt noted his reticence in journals later donated to historical societies. He observed lessons with an intensity that belied his age, absorbing knowledge as if famished for truths beyond the alphabet. But during recesses, while other children chased fireflies or skipped stones, Elijah sat motionless in a corner, gaze fixed on blank walls. Not daydreaming, no, his focus was rapt, as if deciphering invisible scriptures etched in plaster. Abigail once confided in her diary, "It's as though he reads the sins of the world in the shadows." When she broached it with Augustus, he merely nodded, his face a mask of resignation. "He does the same at home. Perhaps the Lord speaks to him in ways we cannot fathom." This stillness wasn't mere shyness, it hinted at a spiritual attunement, a boy perhaps marked for divine purpose or retribution. The Voss house's layout was a blueprint for the unfolding mystery, its 7 rooms a symbolic nod to creation's days, now twisted into a narrative of isolation and revelation. Downstairs, a front parlor with faded upholstery smelling of beeswax and old hymns, where visitors were received under the watchful eye of a framed Bible verse, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." The kitchen, heart of the home, pulsed with the crackle of hearth fires and the savory steam of cornbread baking. A dining area adjoined, its table scarred from years of family prayers. A storage nook held jars of preserves, their glassy surfaces reflecting distorted faces like judgments in a mirror. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms branched like branches of a family tree fraught with thorns. Augustus's east-facing chamber caught dawn's first light, a reminder of resurrection mornings. Rebecca's northern room overlooked fields barren from drought, its chill air evoking the isolation of Gethsemane. Elijah's western sanctum, shrouded by a copse of whispering pines, remained perpetually dim, shadows pooling like inky sins on the floorboards. Light filtered through a single window, 18 by 24 inches, its frame nailed shut with iron spikes, not merely latched, but imprisoned, as if to contain something unholy within. Crucially, a door connected Rebecca's and Elijah's rooms, installed around 1852 when the upper floor was reconfigured from storage space. Crafted of sturdy pine with a simple latch, it bore an anomaly, an exterior iron bar, heavy and cold to the touch, designed to seal from without. Dr. Jeremiah Fielding, who inspected it in October, noted in his meticulous ledger, "The bar suggests restraint, not mere privacy, hardware fresh," contradicting Mr. Voss's claim of inheritance from prior owners. One wonders what specter it was meant to confine. The room itself spanned 9 by 11 feet, Spartan as a monk's cell, a narrow bed with a straw mattress that rustled like dry bones, a chest emitting the faint scent of lavender sachets to ward off moths, a lone chair scarred by idol carvings. Beneath the sealed window, a baseboard gap yawned, an inch-wide fissure stretching 14 inches, warped by humid swells and arid contractions. Through it, faint drafts whispered, carrying the outside world's pollen and pine resin, a slender thread to life beyond. Remember this chasm, it would become a portal in the tale's dark theology, a symbol of how even the slightest crack can invite divine intervention or infernal escape. To grasp the autumn enigma, one must first endure the summer's crucible, a season of biblical plagues where heat descended like the furnaces of Daniel. July's sun scorched the land, turning creeks to cracked mud veins, the air thick with dust that coated throats like ashes of repentance. Crops gasped for mercy, leaves curling in supplication. The Voss Creek dwindled to silence, revived only by August's fleeting storm, its rumble a thunderous sermon from the heavens. Augustus toiled under this judgment, sweat carving rivulets down his back, his silence a prayer for endurance. Rebecca matched his pace, her apron stained with earth's red judgment, while Elijah handled lighter burdens, scattering feed to clucking hens whose feathers fluttered like anxious spirits, hauling pails of brackish water to wilting gardens, gathering twigs from the treeline where shadows promised respite but delivered only solitude. 2 pivotal events that summer wove into the spiritual tapestry, harbingers of the retribution to come. First, the wanderer's arrival, Corporal Theodore Grant, 24, limping home on furlough from a shoulder wound sustained in a June clash. His uniform, tattered and blood-faded, evoked the suffering Christ, dust-caked boots leaving prints like stigmata on the path. He crossed Voss land in late July, parched lips begging water. Augustus, embodying the parable of the Good Samaritan, invited him to supper. The table groaned under simple fare, cornmeal mush and wild greens, scented with woodsmoke and humility. Theodore spoke of war's horrors, the acrid bite of gunpowder, the wails of the wounded echoing like damned souls, the tedium of trenches where men confronted their sins in idle hours. Elijah, at table's end, fixed his gray gaze on the soldier, unblinking as a seer. "You carry more than that scar on your shoulder," the boy murmured, his voice a chill whined through the room. Theodore froze, fork mid-air, the air thickening with unspoken dread. Augustus's knuckles whitened on his cup. Rebecca swiftly offered more bread, diffusing the moment like incense in a troubled sanctuary. Theodore departed into twilight, his silhouette fading against the pines, but that night, Rebecca found Elijah perched on his bed's edge, staring into darkness. "He's marked for healing," the boy said softly. "The Lord spares those who confess." Theodore indeed survived, returning post-war to thrive until 68, his wound a mere memory. Coincidence? Or Elijah's prophetic insight, a glimpse of divine mercy amid retribution's shadow? Such utterances lingered like echoes in a confessional, easy to rationalize, impossible to erase. The second omen, Dr. Elias Crane's visit in early August. Summoned for the boy's lingering cough, dry hacks like warnings from a consumptive prophet, and sleepless nights, the doctor arrived on horseback, his black bag a repository of earthly remedies against spiritual ills. At 51, Crane was a skeptic schooled in Georgia's medical halls, his demeanor brusque as a surgeon's blade. Examining Elijah in the dim bedroom, he noted the cough's banality, dustborne, not dire, but flagged the boy's emaciation, a frame too slight for 7 years, evoking famine's biblical curses. His stillness is unnatural, Crane jotted in his journal, not childish fidget but a meditative trance, as if communing with unseen judges. When queried on pain, he replied, "Not yet, but judgment comes." Pressed, he claimed ignorance, yet his eyes held ancient wisdom. Prescribing an iron tonic sweetened with molasses, a bitter elixir symbolizing life's trials, Crane departed, charging $1, unaware he'd return amid a storm of the soul. September dawned with a divine reprieve, 3 days of northern breezes, cooling the land like manna after wilderness wanderings. On the 3rd, a Sabbath eve, Augustus rose pre-dawn, his breath misting in the crisp air, tending chores under stars fading like retreating demons. Breakfast unfolded in the kitchen's warm glow, chicory coffee's bitter steam, cornbread drizzled with scant honey. Elijah, still in nightshirt, stared at the table's grain as if reading omens in wood. "Slept?" Augustus grunted. "Barely," the boy replied, his appetite mechanical, a duty devoid of joy. Post-meal, Augustus ventured outdoors, Rebecca busied with tasks, Elijah ascended stairs, vanishing into his room. Between 9 and noon, the hour imprecise as a half-remembered prayer, Elijah shut his door, sealing himself from the world. Unalarming at first, children seek solitude, perhaps poring over the family's tattered Bible, its pages yellowed like aged prophecies. Rebecca called for midday meal, no response. Knocking yielded silence, the latch gave way, revealing emptiness, bed unruffled, chair askew, air heavy with absence. Panic bloomed like thorns in Eden. Rebecca summoned Augustus. They scoured the farm, voices fracturing against indifferent landscapes. Barns echoed hollow, gardens yielded no trace, the tree-lean swallowed calls. Neighbors, the Halls, devout folk with sons like eager apostles, joined, combing creek beds dry as bones. By dusk, exhaustion reigned. Jacob Hall, returning to the house, paused at Elijah's door, a threshold now limned in twilight's eerie blue. He knocked softly, whispering, "Elijah?" From within the void, a faint rustle emerged, not wind, not imagination, but a presence stirring like a soul awakening from purgatory. The sound chilled like the breath of divine justice, hinting that the boy's disappearance was no mere flight, but a descent into a realm where sin and salvation blurred. What force had claimed him? A curse of familial guilt, or a miracle veiled in dread? The county would soon grapple with questions that pierced the heart, forcing reflections on their own hidden transgressions, as Elijah's ordeal unfolded like a chilling testament to the unseen hand of retribution. The fading light of that September afternoon painted the Voss farmhouse in strokes of amber and shadow, like a canvas from some forgotten biblical parable where light wrestles with encroaching darkness. The air hung thick with the scent of pine resin and cooling earth, a deceptive calm masking the spiritual storm brewing within those weathered walls. Jacob Hall's hand trembled as he rapped on Elijah's door, though it echoing like a knock on Judgment's gate. "Elijah," he whispered, voice cracking under the weight of unspoken fears. From beyond, not a cry, not a word, but a subtle shift, a rustle akin to a sleeper turning in the grave of dreams. It was the sound of presence, undeniable and alive, pulsing through the barrier like the breath of a guardian angel, or something far less benevolent. Hall's shout pierced the house, summoning Augustus like a father called to reckon with his progeny's sins. He ascended the stairs two at a time, boots thudding on creaking risers, his face a mask of stoic dread etched by years of loss and unspoken guilt. Was this divine retribution for his wife's untimely fever, a plague visited upon his house like those in Exodus? Or a test of faith, as Job endured, stripping away certainties until only raw soul remained? Augustus gripped the latch, iron cold against his calloused palm, and pressed. It yielded freely, clicking with mechanical obedience, yet the door held firm, unbudging as if nailed by invisible spikes from Calvary's cross. He leaned in, shoulder to pine, muscles straining under his linen shirt, sweat beating like penance. The wood flexed, groaning in protest, a living entity resisting mortal intrusion. "Elijah, open this," he bellowed, voice raw with paternal authority laced with terror. Silence stretched, taut as a hangman's rope, then shattered by that breath, slow, rhythmic, emanating from depths that felt both intimate and abyssal. Witnesses later diverged. To Augustus, it whispered close, a son's slumbering sigh against his ear. To Hall, it echoed distant, like whines through Sheol's caverns. This discrepancy gnawed at the soul, hinting at perceptual veils rent by spiritual forces, where one man's miracle was another's curse. No time for pondering, action was the farmer's creed. Augustus dispatched Hall for Dr. Elias Crane, the messenger's horse kicking up red dust clouds that swirled like accusatory spirits along the rutted path. Crane arrived as twilight bled into the sky, his mount lathered, the doctor's coat flapping like raven wings. Informed en route of a locked boy unresponsive, he dismounted with brisk efficiency, bag thumping against his thigh, tools of science against enigmas of the divine. Upstairs, the hallway flickered under lantern light, shadows dancing like imps on the walls, the air stale with anticipation and faint lavender from Rebecca's sachets. Crane inspected the door, latch functional, no jam, bar disengaged, frame unwarped, no debris clogging the seams. Yet when he tried, it mocked him, yielding not an inch, as if sealed by the finger of God, reminiscent of the stone rolled before Christ's tomb, immovable until resurrection's dawn. "Elias Voss," Crane intoned, voice steady but eyes betraying a flicker of unease, "this is your doctor. Open or step back, let me tend you." The response, that inexorable breathing, a metronome of mystery ticking away seconds of mortal bafflement. Crane pressed his ear to the panel, would cool against his cheek, listening as if to the heartbeat of creation itself. A full minute passed, the household frozen in tableau, Rebecca wringing her apron, Augustus clenching fists scarred from fields tilled under heaven's indifferent gaze. When Crane withdrew, his face paled, lines deepening like furrows in fallow ground. It was the countenance of a healer confronting the limits of empirical grace, where medicine bowed before metaphysical riddles. "Fetch pry bars," he commanded, voice low to mask the tremor. Augustus and Hall complied, tools clanging with metallic finality. 15 minutes of grunting effort, bars wedged at hinges and latch, wood splintering faintly, the door protesting like a soul reluctant to confess. Then, abruptly, it relented, not breaking, but surrendering, swinging inward as if an unseen hand had lifted the curse. No nail, no bolt, no earthly explanation marred the frame, just smooth pine, mocking their toil. Inside, the room loomed dim, pines outside casting elongated shadows through the nailed window, the air musty with confinement. Elijah lay supine on his bed, chest rising and falling in that measured cadence, eyes sealed in serene repose, a vision evoking Lazarus before the call, or perhaps a saint in ecstatic trance. Crane strode forth, boots echoing on floorboards that creaked like accusatory whispers. His hand on the boy's shoulder warm, vital flesh, no clammy chill of the grave. Elijah's eyes fluttered open, gray orbs locking with the doctor's, calm as still waters reflecting eternal truths. No startle, no fear, only that profound gaze, assessing sins unspoken. "Pain?" Crane queried, pulse at the boy's wrist steady as a faithful heart. "None," Elijah replied, voice soft yet resonant, carrying undertones of ancient wisdom. He rose fluidly, legs steady, no wobble of weakness, color flushed normal, eyes lucid, no delirium's haze. Crane's examination unfolded meticulously, stethoscope to chest, revealing lungs clear as a confessor's conscience, tongue pink, hydrated, temperature balanced, neither fever's fire nor deprivation's frost. Why bar the door? Crane pressed, lantern light glinting off his spectacles like judgmental stars. Elijah glanced at the threshold, now breached. The time wasn't ripe, he murmured, words hanging like prophetic riddles from Daniel's visions. Crane jotted it verbatim in his ledger, ink flowing with hurried precision. Boy's rationale defies logic, door's defiance defies mechanics. Health pristine, no distress evident. He advised vigilant oversight, door repairs, then departed into the night, horses' hooves fading like echoes of unresolved sins. But the enigma clung to him, a spiritual burr pricking his rational soul. He knew return was inevitable, drawn by the pull of unanswered divine queries. The ensuing fortnight cloaked the Voss farm in uneasy normalcy, like the calm before Noah's floodwaters rose. Uriah Tate, town carpenter with hands gnarled as olive branches, inspected the door, hinges sound, latch pristine. He swapped hardware, screws biting fresh into wood, declaring it fit as the Arkansas. Elijah resumed chores, feeding hens whose clucks mocked the silence, gathering kindling that snapped like brittle faiths. Meals consumed mechanically, appetite a duty not delight. Yet Rebecca noted anomalies, confided later to investigators. Thrice, Elijah queried sustenance's limits. How long without food, he'd ask, eyes probing like a judge weighing souls. First, she replied casually, 3 days, for at most, folk wisdom's decree. Second, curiosity piqued, why ponder such? Just wondering, he evaded. Third, alarm bells tolled, she informed Augustus, who confronted the boy amid the barn's hay-scented gloom. What's this fixation? Augustus demanded, shadow looming. Elijah's gaze, that appraising stare, ancient as Methuselah in a child's form, lingered. Not sure yet, he whispered, words laced with predestined dread. Augustus dismissed it gruffly, cease and mend fences. The boy obeyed, but the query echoed, a spiritual foreshadowing of trials ahead, evoking fasting prophets in wildernesses where manna sustained the faithful. September 19th dawned crisp, autumn's breath whispering redemption through leaves turning gold like prodigal coins. Rebecca descended for breakfast, hearth crackling with morning fire, but Elijah absent. Upstairs, door sealed anew, latch free yet portal unyielding, a recurring curse, symbolic of hearts hardened by sin. No search this time, straight to Augustus, who tested, called, heard the breath like a spirit's sigh from purgatory's edge. He waited 20 minutes, some paternal instinct whispering of timed divine releases, before summoning Crane. The doctor found them vigil-bound in the hallway, air thick with unspoken prayers. Door held, pry bars fetched, but Augustus halted. Last time, it yielded when forced, then freed itself. Crane pondered, querying changes, none in room, boy aid well prior, no ills voiced. Ear to wood, breathing persisted, a rhythmic mantra defying deprivation's toll. Crane settled against the wall, back to plaster cool as doubt, declaring, we abide. 4 hours ticked by, lantern oil burning low, shadows lengthening like accusatory fingers. At 2 post-meridian, the door stirred unbidden, untouched, swinging inward slowly, hinges sighing like released souls. For an instant, emptiness mocked them, then Elijah materialized on the bed, as if conjured from ether, eyes shut in tranquil repose. Crane surged forward, threshold crossed in a blur. Duration, he demanded. Since Eve, Elijah replied, awakening unperturbed. 18 hours tallied, no sustenance, yet vitals pristine, pulse 64, steady as faith, skin supple, no thirsts cracks, mind sharp, denying hidden caches. Room scoured, window nailed, baseboard gap trivial, a mere slit for drafts, symbolic perhaps of narrow gates to salvation. Crane's notes swelled detailed, no dehydration markers, metabolic anomaly suspected, boy claims no hunger, profound uncertainty grips me. He confided not fully with family, sparing them dreads full. Wait, but poured it into correspondence with Dr. Gideon Harlan Pike of Savannah, a mentor of empirical rigor, versed in constitutional peculiarities, variances where bodies bent natural laws like miracles in disguise. September 21 Estes missive, 4 pages dense with incident recaps, door's defiance, boy's serenity, querying precedents for sealed survival sans sustenance as scars. Pike's October 3 reply, a tome of restrained revelation, opening with candor that chilled Crane's core. In 26 years, one unresolved case haunts me, unpublished, lest it brand me mad. 1851, a mid-30s woman cellar-bound 12 days, emergent not ravaged but hibernant, akin to beasts in winter's torpid metabolism slowed to whispers, needs minimized. Your lad mirrors this, suspension of vitality, voluntary or fated? Gift or affliction? Advise scrutiny, meticulous records. This may unveil explicable wonders, or divine mysteries beyond our ken. Pike's words evoked biblical hibernations, Elijah fed by ravens, Jonah in the whale's belly, yet twisted with modern unease, suggesting bodies as vessels for spiritual experiments. Crane pondered, was young Elijah a vessel of redemption, enduring to atone familial sins? Or a harbinger of judgment, his trances portents of wartime woes? The letter's arrival stirred deeper investigations, but for now, the farm teetered on revelation's edge, each breath a prayer against encroaching shadows. Neighbors whispered of curses, pastors preached on sealed tombs, and Augustus wrestled nightly with guilt specters. Had his unyielding grief invited this? Rebecca, ever vigilant, sensed the boy's gaze shifting, as if peering into abyssal truths where sin and grace entwined. As days blurred, the enigma deepened, cinematic in its unfolding, flickering lanterns casting elongated forms on walls like souls in limbo, the doors would grain resembling veined marble of ancient sepulchres, sense of autumn decay mingling with hearth smoke, a sensory dirge for normalcy lost. Emotionally, empathy swelled for Elijah, the innocent conduit, dread for what his endurance implied about human frailty, curiosity gnawing like forbidden fruit, reflection forcing confrontations with personal transgressions. Historically, amid Georgia's 1864 turmoil, Sherman's march looming like apocalyptic horsemen, this anomaly stood as a microcosm of national soul-searching, where survival defied logic, hinting at divine interventions in mortal chaos. Yet the breathing persisted in memory, a chilling underscore to the narrative's rhythm, inhale, exhale, a pause pregnant with possibility. What force animated it? Divine justice, meting out lessons in endurance? Or a psychological shadow, guilt manifest in physical form? The Voss family pressed on, but the door's legacy haunted, a symbol of barriers between seen and unseen, where redemption awaited those brave enough to pry. And pry they would, as the boy's trials escalated, weaving a tapestry of spiritual chill that echoed through generations, questioning if survival was blessing or burden eternal. As October's chill descended upon Haralson County like the first frosts of Judgment Day, the Voss farm stood isolated under skies heavy with omens, gray clouds scudding like fleeing spirits, the air crisp with the tang of fallen leaves decaying into earth's red embrace. Winds whispered through the pines, carrying echoes of distant cannon fire from the war's relentless march, a reminder that mortal strife paled against the spiritual battles unfolding within those clapboard walls. Prosper Lane, the stoic keeper of Mill Street's general store, a dimly lit haven smelling of burlap sacks, molasses barrels, and the faint metallic bite of nails, marked one of the final mundane encounters with Augustus Voss before the veil tore further. On the afternoon of October 1st, Augustus entered, his boots tracking in clay dust that swirled like accusatory ashes. He purchased flour, pale as a shroud, and a box of cut nails, their sharp points glinting under lantern light like instruments of crucifixion. Lane, ever the observer of county souls, noted Augustus's unchanged demeanor, terse words, exact payment, no idle queries. "How fares the boy?" Lane ventured, voice low amid the creak of floorboards. Augustus paused, hand mid-reach for his parcel, eyes shadowing like wells of unspoken guilt, perhaps remnants of his wife's feverish end, a divine punishment he silently bore. "Much the same," he murmured after a beat, words heavy as leaden sins. He departed into the waning light, silhouette merging with the road's rutted path, pines swaying as if in mournful prayer. That evening, the Voss kitchen glowed with hearth fire's flickering warmth, scents of bean soup simmering, earthy legumes mingled with herbs from Rebecca's garden, a humble feast evoking the Last Supper's solemnity. The family gathered around the scarred table, lamplight casting elongated shadows that danced like restless ghosts on the walls. Elijah, unusually animated, partook heartily, seconds of the steaming broth, its savory steam rising like incense, 2 full cups of cool well water, gulped after gulp as if quenching a thirst born of prophetic visions. His gray eyes, alight with an otherworldly focus, met theirs more readily, responses swift and direct, a boy seemingly attuned to the present, yet hinting at farewells unspoken. Post-meal, Augustus, voice gruff with paternal concern, bed early, son, you wear weariness like a cloak. Elijah rose, framed slight against the room's sturdy beams, and fixed his father with that piercing gaze assessing, ancient, as if weighing souls on judgment's scale. I'll dwell in my room a while, he stated, not a child's casual retreat but a declaration etched in destiny's ledger, resonant with biblical undertones of seclusion for divine communion. Rebecca later recounted the moment's etched clarity, the way lamplight haloed his ebony hair, the air thickening with premonition, as if he announced a vigil in Gethsemane. Augustus nodded, seek rest. Elijah ascended the stairs, steps soft as whispers on worn treads, door latching with finality's click. 20 minutes later, Rebecca followed, candle flame guttering in drafts that sighed like penitent breaths. At the threshold, latch yielded, but the door held, unbudging as sin's unyielding grip. She lingered, palm pressed to wood warm as if from inner fires, ear attuned for signs. Silence, save that faint, rhythmic breath, slow, deliberate, a spiritual metronome ticking toward revelation. Descending, she found Augustus at the table, pipe smoke curling like incense of doubt. The door seals again, she whispered. He stared into the hearth's embers, face lined with the furrows of a man grappling with familial curses, his silence a prayer for guidance. Long moments stretched, then, morning will tell. That night, Rebecca tossed in her bed, sheets tangling like chains of anxiety. House sounds amplified, timbers settling like bones in graves, creek murmuring distantly as baptismal waters, midnight winds. Howling through pines, a symphony once soothing, now a cacophony of omens, evoking the tempests of Noah's deluge. Dawn broke October 2nd with sun's pale fingers piercing curtains, but the door remained sentinel, barring entry like heaven's gates to the unworthy. The next morn, same defiance. By October 5th, 4 days into this prolonged trial, Augustus, resolve cracking like drought-parched soil, summoned Crane. The doctor arrived midday, horse steaming in the crisp air, his black bag arsenal against enigmas veiling divine will. Thus commenced a 3-week odyssey of scrutiny, Crane embodying the inquisitor's zeal, documenting with fervor that rivaled scriptural scribes. His notes, spanning 60 pages of cramped script, some dispatched to Pike, some archived in county vaults, intimate musings preserved till his 1891 passing, wove a tapestry of medical rigor laced with spiritual awe. From these sources emerges the Chronicle, a descent into the architecture of mystery, where walls concealed not just structure, but symbols of redemption's narrow paths. October 5th, Crane's arrival mirrored prior rituals, latch test, feudal push, ear to panel. The breathing persisted, yet slower, a whisper of life's essence, barely discernible like the still small voice that spoke to Elijah of old. He queried Rebecca on preludes, the voracious supper, heightened presence. As if storing for famine, she noted, voice trembling with sister's dread. Crane jotted meticulously, ink flowing like confessions. Then, innovation, a tour of contiguous spaces. Rebecca's chamber adjoined via the sealed internal door, wall 18 inches thick, plaster over lath, a barrier thin as faith's veil. Below, the pantry. Dim and cool, scents of preserved fruits lingering like forbidden knowledge. Crane inspected the ceiling, Elijah's floorboards above, for fissures, none evident, wood tight as a confessor's lips. Recalling the baseboard gap, he described, Rebecca affirmed its antiquity. What's beyond, he probed. Merely framework, she replied. His knock on that section echoed hollower, less resonant, a clue to hidden voids, perhaps portals for divine provision or infernal ingress. Externally, ladder propped against west wall, Crane examined the nailed window, spikes intact, frame undisturbed under autumn's golden haze. Roofline pristine, no breaches. Returning indoors, he vigil kept in the hallway 9 hours, departing only for necessities, lantern casting his shadow long as doubt's reach. The breathing endured, a constant hymn to endurance's miracle. By October 9, day 5 sealed, Crane's daily sojourns varied 2 to 8 hours, evolving to systematic sensory mapping. Employing a tumbler as acoustic amplifier, Edinburgh source technique, he auscultated walls and floors. Breathing peaked at the hallway's west baseboard, ebbed at the door, odd, given the bed's east wall placement. Anatomical anomaly, he noted, pondering if the boy communed in unseen postures, perhaps prostrate in prayerful hibernation. October 13 dawned Sabbath-like, Crane arriving at 7, greeted by Rebecca's weary eyes amid kitchen's bread-scent warmth. Routine listening preceded boldness. Requesting bread, he crumbled fragments, sliding them under the 3/4-inch door gap, portal wide enough for morsels, symbolic of manna's meager miracles. 10 minutes watch, stasis. Then, subtle shift, crumbs nudged, untouched yet disturbed, as if by ethereal touch. Crane recoiled, descending to scribe 45 minutes non-stop, thoughts swirling like eddies in baptismal fonts, rejection of sustenance, yet evidence of awareness. Divine fasting? Or sustenance from shadows? October 17, day 13, Crane knocked, door yielded gradually, resisting as if burden from within eased away. Pushing through, he beheld Elijah seated on the bed, eyes open, gaze direct, a vision of resurrection, 16 days sealed. Greetings, Crane uttered, voice steady despite inner quake. Hello, Elijah echoed, composure unearthly. Examination exhaustive, borrowed scale clocked 41 pounds, near 1.5 loss from August's 42. Crane rechecked thrice, script trembling, defies doctrine, child should perish, yet thrives, 4% diminution, hydrated, nourished. Inexplicable grace or curse? Queries flowed, eaten? Not. Drunk? No. Hunger? Pause. Scant. Thirst? Initial, then faded. Sensations? Slowing, like time unwinding. Crane transcribed, heart pounding with revelatory thrill. Pivotal probe, why the seclusion? Elijah's gaze, that profound assessment, weighing soul's worthiness, lingered. An inner voice bids. Feeling? I. Timing? Preceding necessity. Purpose? Eyes to window, gap, uncertain, like storms forewarning, shelter sought. Words hung heavy, evoking prophetic calls to wilderness retreats, where sin's storms raged and redemption dawned. October 18, Crane returned covertly armed chisel, mallet claiming ventilation probe, a white lie amid family's knowing glances. Baseboard pried easily, nails loose in warped wood, revealing cavity, 3-inch airspace twixt siding and plaster. At base, exterior clapboard split, 1.5 gap by 18 inches, not for hands, but drafts, or subtler passages. Crane crouched, mind racing, bread disturbed sans consumption, minimal weight loss, breathing localized, pre-sealed gorging, slowing sensations, Pike's hibernation thesis. Was this conduit for sustenance, moisture, pollen, ethereal essences sustaining suspended life? Symbolic of narrow ways to salvation, where the meek inherit through humility's cracks? Externally, ground-level inspection, gap veiled by overgrown grass, parted to reveal. Thoughts sequenced, what traverses such straight air, insects, divine vapors? Evidence? Inward drawn debris, leaf fragments, dust compressed obliquely, cavity staining, moisture's faint trail. Nothing conclusive, yet consistent with ingress-sustaining metabolic torpor. He resealed, nails hammered with mallets, thud echoing like final judgments, gap minimized, yet mystery lingered, a spiritual chill permeating. Was Elijah's survival miracle of divine justice, atoning generational sins through ascetic endurance? Or haunting legacy of hidden guilts, where walls whispered retributions? As investigations deepened, the farm's atmosphere thickened, lanterns flickering on faces etched with empathy's lines, dread's shadows, sense of wood smoke mingling with autumn's rot, a sensory requiem for innocence lost. Curiosity burgeoned, how did a boy defy death's decree? Reflection stirred, perhaps a parable for wartime souls, hibernating through chaos, sustained by faith's slender threads. Augustus wrestled nightly prayers, guilt over his stoicism perhaps inviting this trial. Rebecca pondered sibling bonds, her precision yielding to wonder. Crane, empiricist turned theologian, grappled with boundaries blurred between science and spirit. Yet the breathing's memory haunted, a slow cadence evoking eternal vigils, where sin's weight slowed time, allowing redemption's glimpse. The gap, now sealed yet symbolic, stood as testament. In narrow passages lay paths to justice, where divine retribution manifested not in thunder, but whispers through walls. Haralson County buzzed with whispers, pastors invoking Lazarus, neighbors crossing thresholds warily, while the Voss legacy chilled spines, questioning if survival masked deeper hauntings, burdens born in silence's depths. Crane's notes evolved speculative, boy's state akin to biblical sleepers, Adam in Eden's trance, Jonah in belly's gloom, metabolism quelled by inner command, sustained via environmental communion? Gap permits ingress, humidity, particulates, perhaps psychically transmuted. Or spiritual manna, unseen yet vital? Guilt's role? Father's silences, family's isolations, perhaps atonement enacted through child's vessel. He pondered psychological symbolism, hibernation as escape from war's sins, divine shield against retribution's blade. Days blurred cinematic, Crane's silhouette against hallway walls, tumbler pressed like confessional screen, breadcrumbs shifting in dim light, evoking Eucharistic mysteries, chisels bite into wood, revealing voids like soul's hidden chambers. Emotionally charged, dread of the unknown clouded hearts, empathy for Elijah's isolation swelled tears, curiosity ignited fervent debates, reflection forced confrontations with personal failings. Had complacency invited such trials? Historically rooted, amid 1864's turmoil, Atlanta's fall echoing like Babel's collapse, this anomaly mirrored national reckonings, where survival demanded spiritual hibernation, defying deprivation through faith's gaps. The narrative tightened, short breaths between revelations, pauses pregnant with meaning, flow rhythmic as narrated scripture. Ultimately, the gap's legacy endured a chilling undertone of divine justice, where sin seeped through cracks, demanding redemption's price. Elijah's emergence not end, but chapter in haunting saga, whispering that some retributions hibernate, awaiting awakening's call. As November's winds swept through Haralson County like the breath of forgotten prophets, carrying the crisp bite of frost-kissed leaves and the faint, acrid whisper of distant bonfires, Dr. Elias Crane retreated to his town practice, a modest room scented with carbolic acid and aged leather-bound tomes, lamplight flickering on walls adorned with anatomical charts that mapped the body's mysteries yet failed to chart the soul's. He harbored discoveries from the Voss baseboard probe, visions of that slender gap, a symbolic fissure in creation's facade, perhaps a narrow gate through which divine sustenance trickled or infernal influences seeped. Yet he withheld from Augustus and Rebecca, words locked in his chest like confessions unabsolved, fearing to ignite familial guilts already smoldering. 2 days hence, Rebecca Voss appeared at his threshold, her knock resolute as a penitent's plea. She entered, skirts rustling over floorboards creaking like judgmental joints, seating herself with that unflinching gaze, eyes deep as wells of inherited wisdom, assessing not just the man but the burdens he bore. "I bear a revelation," she declared, voice steady yet laced with the tremor of unearthed sins, "and I beseech you heed without prejudgment till its end." Crane nodded, stethoscope idle on his desk like a silent witness. "Proceed." Rebecca's confession unfolded like a biblical scroll, revealing Elias's anomalies predated the sealed epics. "He's wandered thus before," she murmured, "not sealed, not prolonged, but as a toddler, 3 or 4 summers past, he'd halt mid-motion. Not slumber, for eyes remained vigilant, breath slowed to whispers, necessitating a hand upon his chest to affirm life's spark. An hour. Perchance 2, then revival and scathed, unremembering, or silent if memory clung." Crane leaned forward, the air thickening with the scent of ink and anticipation. "Did Augustus perceive?" "Father discerned all in Elias," she replied softly, tone shadowed by filial reverence tinged with dread, yet voiced not, as if speech might summon retribution. Their mother, Hannah Voss, felled by fever in 1859, her absence a gaping wound in the family's spiritual armor, had first named it, going away. Hannah framed it as voluntary voyages to realms unseen, safe harbors from mortal tempests. "Elias ventured afar this noon," she'd say, "and returns unscathed." No fear colored her words, instead, serenity, as if witnessing a divine endowment. Rebecca confessed her own terror, a rift from maternal calm. Mother deemed it sanctuary, a shelf for the soul when world's woes assailed, like turtles retreating from predators. Crane froze, the metaphor evoking biblical refuges, Noah's Ark amid floods of sin, or Jonah's whale-belly penance. "A gift," Hannah proclaimed, shielding him. Rebecca's voice cracked unsafe, a complex echo, not denial, but the unease of rationality confronting the ethereal, questioning if such gifts masked curses, retributions for ancestral transgressions. Crane probed familial echoes, others in lineage? Rebecca pondered, face illuminated by windows' pale light filtering through lace curtains like veils of grace. Mother's grandmother, she revealed, endured beyond reckoning, surviving winters that claimed kin, plagues reaping households. Dubbed hard to lose, she defied death's grasp. Crane inscribed, hard to lose, epithet resonant with scriptural resilience, like Job's unyielding faith amid divine trials, or the Israelites' manna-sustained wanderings. This inheritance hinted at a bloodline blessed or burdened with metabolic miracles. Adaptations forged in forges of suffering, perhaps atoning generational sins through unnatural endurance. Post-October, the ceilings morphed, no longer barricaded isolations but subtler withdrawals, as if the boy's spirit had internalized the sanctuary. One final episode in late October, 5 days, the briefest prolonged, culminated on the 30th. Crane, vigil-bound in the hallway, notebook splayed like a confessor's ledger, witnessed the door unlatch from within, ordinary as egress from prayer. Elias emerged, gaze meeting Crane's with near mirth, no need to linger. Crane's examination revealed 4 pounds shed, the starkest depletion, attributed to the mended baseboard, its gap constricted like a narrowed path to redemption, curtailing whatever ethereal provisions once flowed. Downstairs, Augustus and Rebecca prepared sustenance with ritual solemnity, cornbread steaming, beans savory with herbs, a feast symbolizing resurrection's banquet, ordinary yet miraculous, defying deprivation's curse. Alone with Elias in the hallway's dim hush, floorboards cool beneath them, Crane posed. Fear grips you within? The boy, slight frame against shadowed walls, contemplated with grave poise, dark hair tousled, gray eyes pools of ancient knowing. Initially, when younger. No longer. Why? I invariably return. Crane, heart stirred by this child's composure amid 1864's wartime woes, distant echoes of Sherman's scorched march like apocalyptic riders, pressed, assurance of return? Elias's reply chilled. It claims me not for departure, but preservation here. Words evoking divine guardianship, a covenant against annihilation, yet haunting with implications of predestined trials, sins demanding such shields. Crane's November 3 epistle to Pike spanned 11 pages, a testament of observations, defying conventional veils. Detailing ceilings, vitals, Ruth's testimony, he confessed, explanations falter, gap offers sole ingress, yet accounts not for door's defiance, voluntary onsets, nor correlation with stressors, war's shadows, familial griefs. Body registers what mind veils. Concluding, disease? Anomaly? Or lexicon lacking wonder? Elias thrives, vulnerable least, mechanism protective, Hannah's gift. Unpoetic, term adaptation lethal thwarting, grasper intent. Pike's December retort, archived in historical vaults, surveyed nascent metabolic lore from Teutonic and Gallic texts, precursors to hibernation studies yielding no parallels. Final lines, 29 years practice reshaped limits repeatedly, yours obliterates them. Not impossibility, but retained resilience, hereditary or fated, disturbing as truths profound, reshaping knowns. Yearn to encounter this lad. Fate intervened. Pike succumbed February 1865 to fever's scourge, age 53, his quest unfulfilled. Elias's withdrawals persisted, evolving subtler, internal hibernations, stillness overtaking amid overstimulation, classroom corners, farm labors, retreating like prophets to caves for divine commune. He matured, schooling completed in the one-room house, air thick with chalk dust and recited psalms, farm duties shouldered with quiet efficacy, hands calloused yet gentle. County lore painted him peculiar, unsettling aura, inarticulable, yet to intimates, his tolerant amusement soothed like balm on sin-scarred souls. 1872 saw departure, Atlanta's bustling streets, then Tennessee's rolling hills, Virginia's quaint hamlets. A 1874 missive to Rebecca, surveyor's aide, demanding stillness, attention, befitting. Correspondence waned by 1879, lives diverging like branches from a trunk of shared trials. Elias's final epistle, March 14, 1879, wellness prevails, would Clara Hennessy come June. Confided the room, Crane, episodes, she heeded sans fright. Echoed mother's verdict, gift. I concur now. Rebecca treasured it in a cedar box, relic of redemption's arc. Crane practiced till 1887, authoring papers on rural ailments, yet Elias's case eluded publication, drafts aborted, 1882 fragment halting mid-sentence, examinations reveal. Resuming note, medical tone demands certainty, mine lacks, requiring acceptance of uncatalogued capacities. Sat in that hallway, breath-defying sense, perhaps future healer deciphers. Boy survived sealed void, 31 days cumulative, no explanation, only observation's stubborn worth. Survival suffices. The Voss homestead endured per 1890 survey. Clapboards weathered like time-worn testaments, yet ownership shifted post-August's 1886 passing, Rebecca vending 1888 for Atlanta's embrace, surviving till 1919, influenza's plague bypassed as if graced. Elias's chamber, storage by then, door mundane, baseboard renewed, gap erased, yet legacy lingered like indelible sins. Crane's archives, lodged 1891 with preservation edict, slumbered till 1931 historians unearthing, catalyzing 1940s scholarly spotlight. Explanations evaded, gaps purpose, doors seal, 31 days defiance, Crane's legacy, honest chronicle, boundaries acknowledged, refusing feign omniscience. Elias Wood Clara, records fading early 1900s, late 40s, 50s, no premature demise intimated. Hard to lose, ancestral mantle, bloodline resilient against retribution's tides. Spiritually, a chilling parable, gift or curse? Divine justice shielding the pure amid sin storms, or haunting inheritance, guilt's hibernating through veins? Empathy swells for Elias' innocent vessel, dread for mechanisms unseen, curiosity probes soul's depths, reflection demands, what adaptations shield our sins? Cinematically, in vision, Crane's quill scratching parchment under candles sputter, shadows leaping like accusing specters, Rebecca's box opened in twilight, letters ink faded yet potent, Elias's gaze across decades, gray eyes eternal. Sensory, chill drafts through mended gaps, hearths crackle post-emergence, earth's red scent post-rain. Pacing rhythmic, pauses in confessions, breaths in halls, narrative flow authentic, voiceover poetic. Historically, wartime Georgia's backdrop, survival mirroring reconstruction's rebirths. Emotionally, dread's grip loosens to reflective awe, curiosity births wonder, empathy binds to Voss kin's quiet fortitude. Yet the breathing echoes eternally, a spiritual chill, divine retribution's whisper, some sin slow time, granting reprieve, others seal fates. Elias's legacy, not enigma solved, but testament to resilience's grace, haunting generations with questions of what lurks in blood's hidden chambers, awaiting awakening. In sealed rooms of the soul, survival whispers redemption's price, justice's hand ever near.